From calling his airness a horrible player, to a number of spats from their playing days, here's all you need to know about Scottie Pippen slamming Michael Jordan. I've got to start with how he's taken their beef to the next level, by calling MJ a horrible player. Okay, that might be a bit too much, cause come on, you're calling the greatest player to play the sport a horrible player? Well, don't get confused, fellas. I was also taken aback the minute I heard him call MJ horrible. I'd understand if he'd taken shots at MJ, the person, but MJ, the player? Horrible. No way. However, Pippen is absolutely convinced that this is the case, and he's also making sure that everyone knows Jordan was horrible before Pippen joined the Bulls. Okay, now it makes a little bit of sense, because they've been beefing for quite some time, and their troubles reached a fever pitch in 2023. Talking to Stacey King on a podcast, Pippen tore into his airness, pointing out how Jordan was nothing but a mediocre player, and that's why his game had no quality before Pippen came along. If you take away Scottie's anger at Jordan and how much he hates his former teammate, there's some truth in his statements. Wait. Before you cancel me, allow me to explain why I think Pippen's making a bit of sense. Of course, I don't agree that Jordan was horrible before Pippen came along, but check out some of the old highlights of how Jordan used to play in the 80s. The Bulls were a one-man force, and Jordan was just carrying on his merry way. It was great to watch, but basketball's a team sport, isn't it? And Mike was not up to the task of leading the Bulls anywhere without Pippen's help. So, I get where Scottie's coming from. The NBA legend added that players hated playing with Jordan because he was horrible to play with. And if it wasn't for Pippen joining the Bulls, his career simply wouldn't have turned out the way it did at the end of the day. Look, there's no doubt in anyone's mind about how important Pippen's role was in that Chicago side, maybe except for Jordan, because that's exactly how the entire beef was reignited, but I'll get to that in a bit. Pippen also added that Jordan was hell-bent on making poor shots all the time, and that his entire playing style was based on going at it one-on-one. He opened up about how Michael was with the rest of the supporting cast in the dressing room too, but that's something everyone is already familiar with. Steve Kerr won't be forgetting that punch anytime soon, and neither will the other teammates that got trash-talked and were sacrificed to satisfy Mike's ego. Back then, though, it was justified to some degree, cause Jordan was doing everything on the court, playing out of his skin, and helping the Bulls win 6 championships. So it wasn't like anyone had a lot of issues with how MJ treated them, but for him to be this bitter, and his failure to give the team the due credit, has painted MJ in a bad light. That's Scottie's biggest problem with Jordan anyway. He believes that the team endured all kinds of tantrums when MJ was playing, from throwing punches in scrimmages to pushing teammates around because they weren't being competitive. But they've got no reason to still sit back and take this treatment nearly 30 years later. I think he's spot on. Jordan, the player, was a magnificent athlete, the greatest the world has ever seen. The less said about Jordan the person, though, the better. If you want to know about his true nature, check out his comments about his high school coach when he got inducted into the Hall of Fame. His bitterness, a lot like his skill on court, is unmatched. That's why he also hates giving the credit to his fellow teammates and genuinely thinks that he's the only reason the Bulls won those 6 championships. I get it, he was the biggest name on that roster. The Bulls probably wouldn't have won anything without him, but basketball is a team sport at the end of the day. And no matter how much MJ wants to say that he did everything, he wouldn't have won without the help of the other players, particularly Scottie Pippen, who completely lost it when The Last Dance was released. So, show of hands, how many of you have watched The Last Dance? If you haven't, get on it ASAP. You won't regret it. The Last Dance is easily the best basketball documentary, and it gives a great insight to the background story of Jordan's phenomenal career. The only thing it lacks is the part where it dives into the important role that his teammates played in helping the Bulls become the best team in NBA history. Oh, and before you say that Pippen should be angry at the producers and the directors, I'll tell you that Mike had all the editorial content of the final product, and without his nod, it wouldn't have been released. More importantly, given how we know Jordan's tried to glorify his already tremendous career since retiring, it's not a reach to say that he did it on purpose. Pippen's convinced of it, and he's not one to slag Mike off only in podcasts. He actually confronted his former teammate and friend directly and slammed him, saying that he wasn't too pleased with how it turned out to be. I don't blame him. Poor Pippen mentioned how excited he was to see the documentary when it came out, only to realize that more than an attempt at revisiting the story of the 90s Bulls, the documentary focused only on Jordan being the hero. To his surprise, when he confronted MJ, the GOAT replied by saying that Scottie was right and accepted the view. Yet, he didn't apologize for it. Since then, Pippen's been fuming as it has reignited the beef these two had all those years ago. Oh yeah, don't think for one second that this is a recent thing. Pippen and MJ had plenty of issues back during their playing days too. Did you know that the first time things turned sour between them, it involved a very famous Hollywood name? Any guesses, folks? Madonna. That's right, I couldn't believe it either, but it's a popular story on the grapevine. Before Pippen settled down with Larsa, he used to have a big admirer in Madonna, who'd often come to see the Bulls play. Mike, being the more popular figure, just couldn't believe that someone like Madonna would prefer Pippen over him, so he'd try to put on a show, something along the lines of what Jordan Poole does when there's a baddie in the crowd. But Madonna's mind was made up. She only wanted Scottie, and would send a limo to get Pippen after matches for the two to have some fun. It got to a point where Madonna was asked about the affair because MJ was pissed, and she said that she preferred Pippen because he could satisfy her more than Jordan. Ouch. That didn't sit right with MJ, as you can expect, and the two were caught up in another love triangle. But this time, Jordan wasn't directly involved. Yep, this one's a shocker, so get ready. Did you know that Mike's son has been dating Larsa, Scottie's ex-wife? That puts a whole nother dimension on their beef, doesn't it? Sure, Mike might not have egged his son on to get it going with Larsa, but given what we've discussed about Jordan so far, would you be brave enough to guarantee that? Yep, thought so. For those who don't know, Scottie and Larsa were the dream couple. They'd been together for more than 2 decades, and the separation along with eventual divorce were big news in the gossip world. In fact, they managed to stay on good terms even after the separation, but all that changed when Larsa was caught snogging Marcus Jordan. Oh man, you can probably imagine how Scott's world came crashing down from that minute on, and it fractured whatever was left of the MJ-Pippen friendship. That said, there wasn't too much to begin with even when they were dominating the NBA. They had plenty of falling outs even as players, like the time when Pippen claimed that he deserved more money, and how severely underpaid he was compared to Jordan. He openly talked about it. Instead of dealing with this matter behind the scenes, with the organization, his statements had a bitter touch toward Mike, and he clearly didn't appreciate it. But then came the 97-98 season, and just before the campaign began, Pippen underwent surgery for a foot injury that had been bothering him for quite some time. When Jordan got to know, his anger was uncontrollable. He questioned Scott's decision to delay it until the beginning of the season instead of the off-season and blamed him for damaging the team's chances of winning the title. Pippen has since opened up about it, explaining his decision and how it was the right one to make given his long-term health. Well, there you have it. From a number of spats from their playing days to calling his airness a horrible player, this was all you needed to know about Scottie Pippen slamming Michael Jordan.